Archaeologist, philosopher, bonsai aficionado, author, black belt, and squanderer of over 50,000 hours watching B-movies. He uses this wealth of useless knowledge to bring you classic movie reviews with snark and world-famous short summaries. Now broadcasting from beautiful downtown Tallahassee, it's Classic Movie Reviews with Snark.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. Today we are looking at another pairing of Bogie and Bacall. Episode 40 is a wonderful film, Key Largo, 1948. Not only having a cast of great actors, this movie also has the benefit of John Huston as the director. So I'll jump right into Key Largo, 1948. Humphrey Bogart played Major Frank McLeod. He was featured in episode 25, Sahara, 1943. Edward G. Robinson played the gangster Johnny Rocco. We covered him in episode 35, The Violent Men, 1955. Lauren Bacall played Nora Temple. She was covered in episode 39, Dark Passages, 1947. Finally, there's Lionel Barrymore, who played James Temple. Lionel Barrymore was born in 1878, Philadelphia. By the turn of the century, he was acting with his family on Broadway. Through the first part of the 20th century, he acted in the U.S. and abroad. Barrymore started directing shorts. His first full-length silent film was Life's Whirlpool, 1917, featuring his famous sister, Ethel Barrymore. In 1926, he joined MGM. He worked as a director for talkies and as a character and bit lead. With the advent of talkies, his stage training came into play. He continued to direct such films as Glorious Night, 1929, and Madam X, 1929. He acted in many films for MGM, including A Free Soul, 1931, that got him a Best Actor Oscar, Rasputin and the Empress, 1932, as Rasputin, Grand Hotel, 1932, and Dinner at 8, 1933. Some of Barrymore's greatest work was done when he was lent out by MGM Studios. He appeared with Gloria Swanson in Sadie Thompson, 1928. He was in D.W. Griffith's Drums of Love, 1928. You Can't Take It With You, 1938. It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, directed by Frank Capra. He worked for David O. Selznick in Duel in the Sun, 1946. And of course with John Huston for Key Largo, 1948. Barrymore may be known to modern audiences as Old Man Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. However, I'm a little partial to On Borrowed Time, 1939, where Barrymore's character traps Death in the top of an apple tree to protect the interests of his grandson. In the 30s and 40s, he had recurring roles as Dr. Gillespie in the Dr. Kildare movies. By this point, he had already broken his hip twice and was suffering from severe arthritis. After Captain's Courageous, 1938, he played all of his roles in a wheelchair. His last movie was the musical comedy Main Street to Broadway, 1953, and he died the following year at the age of 76. Claire Trevor played drunken gun moll Gay Dawn. Claire Trevor was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1910. I'm seeing a trend. She became interested in acting and attended Columbia University. She also attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. By 1930, she was working professionally on the stage, debuting on Broadway in 1932. Her first film was a Western, Life in the Raw, 1933. Before she was typecast as the hardened women, many of her earlier roles were diverse and showed her considerable talent. One of her earlier standout roles was in Dante's Inferno, 1935, with Spencer Tracy. Another role was as a good girl forced into prostitution in Dead End, 1937, with Humphrey Bogart. Claire was cast as downtrodden saloon girl Dallas in John Ford's epic Stagecoach, 1939. Her pairing with John Wayne was on fire, and this movie turned Wayne into a star. In the 40s, she found her place, and that was in film noir. She started out playing a killer in Streets of Chance, 1942, with Burgess Meredith. She played Mrs. Greeley in a Philip Marlowe P.I. film, Murder My Sweet, 1944, and then as a besotted ex-nightclub singer and failed gun moll in Key Largo, 1948. She won an Oscar for this role. Claire was again paired with John Wayne in The High and the Mighty, 1954. After that, it was television and stage work. Her final film was Kiss Me Goodbye, 1982, as Sally Field's mother. She retired to California and promoted the performing arts. Claire passed in 2000 at the age of 90. Marc Lawrence was cast in the role of gangster Ziggy. Born in the Bronx, I'm seeing a trend. Lawrence studied acting in high school and at City College. After working in theater, Lawrence was given a contract with Columbia Pictures. His dark and scarred face made him a natural for playing gangsters, and that is what he did until after World War II. He was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, where he confirmed that he had been a member of the Communist Party. He named names and was blacklisted. Lawrence left for Europe and worked in film until the U.S. regained its senses and he returned to Hollywood in the roles he was born to play. He died in 2005 at the age of 95. In this movie, Edward G. Robinson as Johnny Rocco made a comment about HUAC.
After living in the USA for more than 30 years, they call me an undesirable alien. Me, Johnny Rocco. Like I was a dirty rat or something.
Kind of ironic that a member of the cast would be driven out as a communist following this film. Monte Blue was cast as Sheriff Ben Wade. Monte Blue was born in 1887 but ended up in an orphanage after his father died. Big and strong, he was a railroader, a fireman, a coal miner, a cowpuncher, a ranch hand, a circus rider, a lumberjack. Trekking west, he became a day laborer for D.W. Griffith's Biograph Studios. The references are in the show notes. Working as a stuntman, Blue got a role as an extra in The Birth of a Nation, 1915. Working with Griffith and Cecil B. DeMille, he got increasingly larger roles, earning his big break as Danton in Griffith's Orphans of the Storm, 1921, with Lillian and Dorothy Gish. He was a romantic star, but he lost most of his money in the 1929 stock market crash. In the 30s, he was back to bit roles. Before he died in 1963, he was working for a circus. Pat Flaherty had a very small, uncredited role as the Traveler. His story is so great I had to share it with you. He served in the Mexican border wars against Pancho Villa with Blackjack Pershing in 1916. In World War I, he served as a flying officer. After the war, he played minor league baseball, and in 1923 began playing football for the Chicago Bears. After he was done with sports, he went to New York, where he became successful as a music publisher. Next, he married Dorothea X. Fugazi. Great name. She was the daughter of a famous boxing promoter. In 1930, he moved to Hollywood to work as a producer for Fox Films. However, the Great Depression had other plans. With no job producing, he turned to acting. He had over 200 film and television appearances in his career, playing mostly small, tough guy parts like cops and bosses. One of his earlier roles was as a detective in A Day at the Races, 1937, with the Marx Brothers. He was also a technical advisor on baseball movies and taught Gary Cooper to pitch for his role in The Pride of the Yankees, 1942. I'm partial to him in the role of the Junkman in The Best Years of Our Life, 1946, where he gave Fred Derry, Dana Andrews, the break he needed to get his life back on track. If that wasn't enough, in World War II he was commissioned as a Marine Corps officer and served in Korea, being discharged with the rank of major. Jay Silverheels had an uncredited part as Tom Osceola, one of the two escaped Indians. Silverheels was born in Canada. He was a star lacrosse player and a boxer before he became a film stuntman in 1938. He worked in several films before Key Largo, but he was noticed in his small part and was cast in The Cowboys and the Indians. Also in this movie was a fellow named Clayton Moore. Later that year, Silverheels was cast to play Tonto in the Lone Ranger series, 1949-57. Silverheels was in two movies where he played Tonto, The Lone Ranger, 1956, and The Lone Ranger and the Lost City of Gold, 1958. When the series ended, Silverheels was hopelessly typecast as Tonto. He became a spokesman for the portrayal of Native Americans in all types of media. Story. The film starts out with an aerial shot of the Florida Keys. The text says, "At the southernmost point of the United States are the Florida Keys, a string of small islands held together by a concrete causeway. Largest of these remote coral islands is Key Largo." Really, the southernmost point of the United States is in the Virgin Islands at Point Udall. Sheriff Ben Wade, Monte Blue, pulls over a bus driving across one of the Key bridges. Wade tells the driver they're looking for a couple of Indians that broke out of jail. He describes them as young bucks in fancy shirts. Sounds like a Florida State game. Deputy Clyde Sawyer, John Rodney, walks through the bus looking for the pair. After the bus leaves, the bus driver tells Major Frank McLeod, Humphrey Bogart, that the Indians always head for home. McLeod says, "Home being Key Largo?" Is this McLeod looking for the home he doesn't have? The bus drops Frank at the Largo Hotel. A man we later find out is Toots, Harry Lewis, is reading a newspaper in the lobby. Frank rings the bell and asks for the owner, Mr. Temple. Toots tells Frank that the hotel is closed and he doesn't know when Mr. Temple will be back. Frank walks into the hotel bar to find a woman and some men listening to the radio. Frank asks for a drink, and the man behind the bar and Toots tell him again the hotel is closed. The woman insists that he be given a drink, and the man behind the bar gives him one. When Frank sits by the woman, he sees she is drunk out of her gourd. She is listening to horse racing on the radio and checking her horse racing form. A buzzer behind the bar goes off, and a man behind the bar hands a drink to Toots. The woman volunteers to take the drink up, but the man says he will send for you when he wants you. The man behind the bar is Angel, Dan Seymour, and the woman requests another drink for Frank. When the woman asks Frank for his name, he gives her his name and pedigree like he was a thoroughbred racehorse.
Take fancy free. Morning line 12 to 1. That's ridiculous. He should be 4 to 1, even less. Look at that breeding. By chance play out of misconstrued by Omaha. Of course, he hasn't won in 11 starts. True, but he's been twice in the money, and today he's running a $3,000 claiming race. Ought to be a cinch.
Yes?
What's your name?
McLeod, Frank, by John out of Helen.
She introduces herself as Gay Dawn, Claire Trevor. Gay Dawn is such a happy name for such a sad lady. When Toots returns, he tells Gay that he is ready for her now. She staggers across the lobby as she tries to fix her makeup. The men tell Frank again that the hotel is closed. He asks why are they there, and they say by special arrangement. When Frank says he doesn't want to stay and only needs to see Mr. Temple, the men tell Frank that Temple is out at the boathouse. Out on the dock, Frank meets James Temple, Lionel Barrymore. Temple is in a wheelchair. When Frank introduces himself, Temple calls for his daughter-in-law, Nora Temple, played by Bogie-Bacall. Temple introduces Nora as George's wife, and Frank tells them that he served with her husband in World War II Italy. They have a little small talk, and Frank says he knows all about the keys from George, the dead husband of Nora.
Ever been down here before? No, sir. George was right. The keys are different than anything I've ever seen, and hotter. Don't look for it to get any cooler before November. The thermometer will go down to about 100, and the sandflies and mosquitoes will disappear, and it'll be right livable for about 3 months on the Keys, except for the tourists.
Quotes listed in IMDb as a mistake. It's not really a mistake, it's just an expression. Temple coerces Frank into staying the night in George's old room. When Nora heads back to the hotel, she sees Sheriff Wade and Deputy Sawyer. The police ask Temple if he's seen the Osceola brothers. He says he has not, but says he will send word for them to turn themselves in to the police.
Cool Indians. 30 days to do and they bust out.
30 days in jail for an Indian is like 30 years to somebody else.
Temple tells Frank that the two brothers grew up with George and were good people who get drunk and tear stuff up.
Those two brothers and my boy George grew up together. There's no harm in them. They just went to Palm Grove and got a little snootful and started to take Florida back for the Indians. Came mighty near succeeding, too.
Back inside, Temple introduces the men to Frank and tells of Frank being his son's commander in Italy when he was killed. Suddenly, a commotion breaks out upstairs. The third man from the bar shoves Gay into a room. When Nora asks the man why he hit her, the man says she's a drunk and that's the only thing that'll stop her. Nora tells Frank his room is ready and the pair go up. She tells him the third man was named Curly Hoff, Thomas Gomez, and that he and Gay have been there about a week. Nora and Mr. Temple told them that the hotel was closed, but they offered so much money that they let them stay. Nora tells that about 4 days back, Mr. Brown and the other men arrived by boat. Nora tells him that Brown only comes out at night and must be very rich because the others jump at his command. They expect the whole group to leave in a day or two. After Nora leaves, Curly comes in and apologizes for the rough treatment of Gay. He says they've been planning a fishing trip, and one guy ruined it by bringing along a lush. Frank is not happy with the way she was treated. Nora takes a phone call downstairs that lets them know a hurricane is coming. Nora, Frank, and Temple meet again and talk of George and the place he is buried. Frank and Nora head outside to secure the boat before the storm hits. Nora questions Frank about his visit, and he tells her he is thinking about settling down in the Keys. Curly shows up and introduces Ralph Feeney, William Haade, another member of the group. Frank drops the line that his first sweetheart was a boat.
How's your ground tackle off the stern?
Plenty heavy.
Well, we better just double up on these bow lines. Where'd you learn about boats? My first sweetheart was a boat.
When they are done, a Native American family arrives in small boats. Nora tells Frank that the Indians often stay at the hotel during storms. In one of the boats are the fugitive Osceola brothers, Tom, J. Silverheels, and John, Rod Redwing. The brothers say they want to give themselves up, and Nora sends them to see Temple. Nora and Frank head back to the hotel as the wind starts blowing. She starts prepping the inside. Some of the men are already nervous about the coming storm. Curly again tries to make nice with Frank, but no chance. Temple brings the Osceola brothers to the lobby, and although there is a police car outside, they can't find the sheriff. The phone rings, and Curly tells everyone not to answer it, and he picks it up. He tells the caller that Nora and Temple are not there, and if Deputy Sawyer shows up, they will call back. When Nora tries to get to the phone, Curly snatches it away, and Frank moves in. Both Curly and Toots pull out guns. The scene then switches to a man in a tub, Mr. Brown, Edward G. Robinson, smoking a cigar and drinking a drink. Curly comes in, and we pray that they don't show Edward G. Robinson naked. He tells about the gunplay, and the phone call was the sheriff looking for Deputy Sawyer. They then show the bleeding Sawyer laying in the bed, having been jumped by the gang while looking for the Indian brothers. Temple calls the gang down, and he gives them hell. He has no fear of death, but puts all the others in danger of being killed as well. Mr. Brown says he'll be gone in a couple of hours. Then Sawyer staggers out of the bedroom. Frank recognizes Mr. Brown as gangster Johnny Rocco.
I know that name.
Sure, Pop. Who doesn't?
Johnny Rocco, the gangster, Mr. Temple. The one and only Rocco.
Rocco? Rocco?
What's that, Pop? I'm kind of deaf. Rocco! Oh. He said Rocco.
Rocco is an amalgamation of Al Capone, who retired to Florida before dying of syphilis, and Lucky Luciano, who was deported from the U.S. but moved to Cuba. As Temple insults Rocco more, Frank plays him up and appeals to his vanity. Frank is really saving their lives. Rocco starts toying with Temple, and Temple falls out of his wheelchair. Nora claws Rocco's face, but he twists her arm behind her back and kisses her. About that time, Rocco gets a call from Miami, and the tension is relieved. Curly also tells Rocco that there are some Indians on the porch, but Rocco won't give them shelter from the storm. Rocco tells Ziggy on the phone that it has to be tonight during the storm. Rocco's Cuban boat captain, Alberto Morin, says he needs to move the boat to deeper waters during the storm. Rocco says he will kill him if he moves the boat. At the same time, Sawyer is telling the others that he came to look for the Indians, and when he went to call Sheriff Wade, he was knocked out. Rocco comes in and tells his gang that everything is set for the night. Rocco caterwauls about how bought Florida politicians turned their back on him. This line was incorrectly cited during the 2000 Florida presidential election recount. Rocco then sees Nora in the mirror and starts calling her a wildcat, like another he knew, named Maggie Mooney, who now goes by Gay Dawn. Rocco whispers in Nora's ear, and she is disgusted by his words. He does it again, and she spits in his face. Rocco gets so mad he's about to kill Nora. Again, Frank appeals to his ego and says that if he kills the girl, he will have to kill everyone else as well. Gay comes back looking a little better, but is only interested in getting a drink. Rocco has ordered Angel not to give her any more drinks. When Rocco comes in the room, she sees the scratches and knows what has happened. Rocco starts verbally sparring with Frank, the only one near his equal in the room. Rocco gives a pistol to Frank and levels another gun at Frank's midsection. Rocco says you can get rid of Rocco, but you have to die for it. After being egged on, Frank throws the gun down and says,
One Rocco, more or less, isn't worth dying for. Give me that gun.
No, I'm afraid you'd use it. One old man, more or less, isn't worth dying for.
Deputy Sawyer leaps for the gun and begins to leave the room holding the gun on the gang. As he gets to the door, Rocco fires, and Sawyer pulls the trigger on an empty gun. Nora thinks Frank is a coward. Curly and Angel row out to sea and dump Sawyer's weighted body. Ziggy calls and he hasn't left Miami. Rocco gives him a deadline. The storm knocks out the power and Toots forces everyone downstairs. Gay is still trying to get a drink. Gay fixes a drink and Rocco pours it out. When Rocco complains about her being a lush, she reminds him that he gave her her first drink.
You gave me my first drink, Johnny.
Oh, so it's all my fault now. Everybody has their first drink, don't they? But everybody ain't a lush.
Then he starts talking about what she was like in the past and says he will give her a drink if she will sing Billie Holiday's song, Moanin' Low. She sings pretty bad and Rocco won't let her have a drink. Frank pours her a drink and when he gives it to her, Rocco slaps him 3 times. Frank just looks at Gay and replies, "You're welcome," to her thanks.
Thanks, fella.
You're welcome.
The storm hits its peak and the house starts shaking and moaning. When Rocco gets nervous, Temple starts laying it on about the 1935 hurricane where 800 people were killed. In reality, the 1935 Labor Day hurricane is still the strongest to ever hit the United States and killed about 423 people. It also blew a train off the tracks. Rocco is pretty shaken and Frank's face shows that he now has the advantage. Frank asks why Rocco doesn't show the storm his gun. Temple starts praying for a wave to kill them all. Rocco pulls his gun on Temple, but Frank steps in and Rocco puts the gun to Frank's belly and pulls the trigger. However, it's still unloaded. A tree crashes through the window, again breaking off the tension. As they wait for the storm to end, Nora asks if she will see Frank again, and Temple says they consider him family. Toots comes running in to tell Rocco that the boat has left. Rocco doesn't skip a beat and says Frank will drive them to Cuba in the smaller Santana, which happens to be the name of Bogart's sailboat. The Osceola brothers push through the door and scream at Temple for not letting the Indian family inside. Frank agrees to take Rocco and crew rather than being beaten by Toots. There's a knock on the door and Sheriff Wade comes in and says he's looking for Sawyer. They all deny, some willingly and some under duress, of having seen Sawyer or the Osceolas. Wade knows Sawyer called from the hotel and is suspicious. He goes out to his car and sees Sawyer's body washed up on the road. Rocco comes out and lays the crime at the feet of the Indians. The sheriff sees the pair and shoots them as they flee. The sheriff is seeing red. He blames Temple for the 3 deaths and says he will be charged as well. Wade starts questioning the gang, and by now Frank is getting fighting mad. Ziggy's gang shows up, and the first one to enter pretends to be a tourist played by Pat Flaherty. Ziggy, Marc Lawrence, comes in and after reliving old times with Rocco, exchanges a large amount of counterfeit money for a smaller amount of real money. Ziggy and his gang leave going north. Gay and Nora tell Frank to run away in the dark because Rocco will kill him when they get to Cuba. As the gang and Frank start to head out for the boat, Gay wants to know why her bags are not being loaded. Rocco tells her she is not going and here's enough money to stay drunk for a long time. Gay jumps on Rocco, begging and pleading to be taken along.
Where are my things?
Oh, I've got to tell you, you're not coming. Yeah, unless you can stay drunk for a month.
Johnny, please take me with you.
No, get away.
You got to, Johnny, you got to.
Go on.
Please.
Come on,
I'll
George.
stop drinking. I'll do anything. Only take me with you. Please, Johnny, I love you. I
Let's go.
need you.
Hey,
I'll
will
kill
you?
myself. I will. Johnny, please. Please. Listen, I'll be good luck to you like I was before. I won't let you go without me. You've got to take me with you. You've got to. You've got to.
Come on, soldier.
When he pushes her aside, we see that she has taken Rocco's gun, now loaded, and slipped it to Frank. Frank heads the boat towards Cuba in a fog, as Toots sits in the back, sick as a dog. Rocco, Angel, and Curly are below deck. Ralph is by Toots. Frank asks Ralph to look over the back for kelp. He guns the boat, throwing Ralph overboard. Toots rises to shoot, and Frank shoots first, but Toots gets off one round, hitting Frank in the side. As Frank retrieves Toots' gun, Curly comes up, and Frank shoots him on the stairs. He climbs up onto the roof of the boat and looks down through the hatch at the stairway coming out of the cabin. Rocco tries to force Angel to go up, but he won't, so Rocco shoots him. Rocco goes through the bargaining steps with Frank, calling him soldier over and over. You can have half the money, all the money, more money.
Soldier, listen to me. Angel and Curly are dead. They're just me and you. From now on, we'll be partners. Everything will be 50-50. What do you say? Can you hear me? What do you say? Is it a deal? I know what you're thinking. You get rid of me and have all the money for yourself. Is that it? Is it? Answer me! I'll tell you what. Suppose I say the money is yours. Yeah. Here, look. It's yours. All yours, soldier. Plenty more when we get to Cuba. Okay, soldier?
And then I'm throwing my gun out. Rocco throws out one of the 2 guns he has, and then comes up. Frank shoots him from above. It takes 3 shots to end Rocco. Rocco was just like the storm, strong for a while and then burned out. I've always had a problem with the gunfight on the boat. It's clearly shot on a soundstage and suffers from this look. John Huston didn't have a convincing end for the script. Howard Hawks gave him the shootout on a boat that occurred near the end of the film. Hawks had wanted to include it in To Have and Have Not in 1944, but couldn't make it fit. However, it tied everything up nicely in Key Largo. Recently, I've become less critical of the ending based on a line from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, 1982. Spock says something along the lines of, "He is intelligent but lacks experience. His pattern reflects two-dimensional thinking," which Kirk says, full stop, Z minus 10,000. So in the Key Largo scene, Rocco can't adapt to Frank's elevated attack platform. Gay has turned state's evidence, and Ziggy and his gang are captured near the Georgia line. Frank calls the Coast Guard and Nora.
Calling Nan, my cable. Calling Nan, my cable. It's Able Sugar Able Nan. Able Sugar Able Nan. Calling Nan, my cable. Calling Nan, my cable. Come in, please.
The movie ends with Frank heading to his new home and love. World-famous short summary: a typical South Florida vacation. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes and give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show note to my site. Beware the Moors.